There is a strange kind of power in people who wake up at 5 a.m. Not the kind of power that shouts or demands attention, a quieter one. The kind that makes people pause when they look at you because they can sense something different. You've probably seen someone like this before. They walk a little calmer. They speak a little slower. They seem almost immune to chaos. While everyone else is rushing, reacting, negotiating with themselves, they simply execute. And people notice. Not always consciously, but they feel it. Because discipline has an aura. And when that discipline becomes absolute, when it becomes something that cannot be negotiated, cannot be delayed, cannot be broken, it starts to change the way the world reacts to you. But here's the strange part. Most people want to wake up at 5 a.m. They try it. For a few days, maybe a week. They buy the productivity books. They download the habit apps. They set alarms. They promise themselves that tomorrow will be different. And then something happens. The alarm rings and the negotiation begins. Maybe I need more sleep. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe weekends don't count. Within 2 weeks, the habit disappears. Not because they are lazy, not because they lack ambition, but because they are trying to win a psychological battle they do not understand. You see, waking up at 5 a.m. is not actually about waking up early. It is about eliminating the possibility of negotiation. The moment negotiation exists, discipline collapses. This is why some people can maintain the 5 a.m. rule for years, while others fail every single time they attempt it. They are not using motivation, they are using something much older, a principle that has been practiced for centuries by warrior monks in Japan, a principle known as gyoji. Gyoji means something simple but extremely dangerous to the modern mind: practice without gaps. Not when you feel like it, not when conditions are perfect, not when motivation appears, without gaps. Once the practice exists, it continues, every day, no exceptions. And when this principle is applied to waking up at 5 a.m., something unusual happens. The habit stops being a decision, it becomes an identity. You are no longer someone trying to wake up early, you become someone who wakes up at 5 a.m. And people can feel the difference, because when a rule becomes unbreakable, so does the person who follows it. But before you can build this rule, you must understand a painful truth. The reason most people fail the 5 a.m. habit is not because waking up early is difficult, it's because humans are masters of self-negotiation. And every morning, the same cycle begins, a cycle that destroys discipline before the day even starts. To understand how to break it, we need to look at the story of someone who failed the 5 a.m. rule over and over again until he discovered the one change that made the habit impossible to break.
Raphael believed the problem was motivation. That was his first mistake. Like many people, he discovered the idea of waking up at 5 a.m. through a productivity video online. The message was seductive. Wake up before the world, build your routine, control your life before chaos begins. It sounded powerful, and for the first few days, it felt powerful too. Day 1, the alarm rang at 5 a.m. Raphael jumped out of bed with a strange sense of pride. The world outside was silent. The air felt different, like he had entered a secret hour most people never experienced. He made coffee. He read 10 pages of a book. He wrote in a journal. And for the rest of the day, he carried a quiet confidence. I woke up at 5 a.m. today. Day 2 felt almost the same. Day 3 was slightly harder, but by day 5, something else appeared. A voice. A small, logical voice. When the alarm rang at 5 a.m., Raphael didn't jump up immediately. He stayed still for a moment. And that was the moment everything changed. Because discipline rarely collapses instantly. It collapses through negotiation. The voice began politely. You slept late yesterday. You worked hard. Your body needs rest. Just this once. So Raphael made a deal with himself. Okay, 15 more minutes. He hit snooze. 15 minutes became 30. 30 became an hour, and suddenly it was 6:20 a.m. The routine was gone. The day still continued, of course. Raphael went to work, answered emails, finished tasks, but something subtle had already been lost: the identity of someone who wakes up at 5 a.m. The next day, he tried again. Day 1, again. Motivation returned. The cycle restarted. And over the next 2 months, Raphael repeated the same pattern again and again. Motivation, negotiation, surrender, reset. Motivation, negotiation, surrender, reset. If you've ever tried to build a difficult habit, you probably recognize this cycle. It looks like this. First comes inspiration. You watch a video, read a book, or imagine a better version of yourself. Then comes commitment. You buy a notebook, you set alarms, you promise yourself that this time will be different. For a few days, it works. But then something enters the system. Fatigue, stress, a late night, a cold morning, and suddenly the brain begins its favorite activity: negotiation. Maybe tomorrow, maybe weekends don't count, maybe 6 a.m. is good enough. The habit slowly dissolves, not through failure, but through tiny compromises. And here's the brutal truth Raphael eventually realized: the human brain is incredibly skilled at one thing: protecting comfort. Your brain does not care about your goals. It cares about energy conservation. Sleep is safe. Warm blankets are safe. Remaining still is safe. And when the alarm rings at 5 a.m., your brain immediately calculates the easiest way to maintain comfort. So it invents logical arguments. Arguments that feel reasonable, arguments that feel intelligent, but they all lead to the same destination: the death of the habit. Raphael tried everything: motivational speeches, habit tracking apps, cold showers, accountability partners. Nothing worked for more than 2 weeks. Because every method he tried had the same hidden weakness. They all relied on willpower. And willpower loses every battle that takes place at 5 a.m. in a warm bed. It took Raphael months to understand something simple but powerful. The problem was not waking up early. The problem was that the decision still existed. As long as Raphael had to decide whether to wake up at 5 a.m., the habit would eventually fail. Because decisions invite negotiation, and negotiation destroys discipline. This is when Raphael discovered an idea that changed everything. An idea used for centuries by monks, soldiers, and elite performers. An idea that removes negotiation entirely. It begins with one sentence, a sentence that looks small but changes the structure of identity itself. Not, "I will try to wake up at 5 a.m., but something far more dangerous: "I wake up at 5 a.m. And once that sentence becomes true, the entire system changes. The turning point for Raphael didn't begin with a new alarm clock. It began with a sentence. For months, he had been saying the same thing to himself: "I'm trying to wake up at 5 a.m. It sounded responsible, it sounded disciplined, it sounded like someone who was improving his life. But hidden inside that sentence was a dangerous loophole. Trying means failing is still allowed. Trying means negotiation is still possible. Trying means the identity hasn't changed. When you say, "I'm trying to wake up at 5 a.m., you are still the same person you were yesterday. Someone who sometimes wakes up early and sometimes doesn't. Your brain understands this perfectly, which means every morning becomes a decision again, and decisions invite negotiation. This is where Raphael encountered the ancient principle used by Japanese Zen practitioners, gyoji, practice without gaps. But what most people misunderstand about gyoji is that it is not just about repetition, it is about identity. A monk does not wake up early because he is motivated. He wakes up early because that is who he is. The action is not something he debates, it is something he embodies. This is why monks, soldiers, and elite athletes often appear almost robotic in their discipline, not because they have superhuman willpower, but because the decision was removed long ago. Raphael realized something uncomfortable. Every time he failed the 5 a.m. habit, it wasn't because of sleep. It was because he had never changed his identity. He was still someone who wanted to wake up at 5 a.m., not someone who does. So he changed the sentence. Not a goal, not a plan, a declaration. I wake up at 5 a.m. At first, it felt almost ridiculous because the mind resists identity shifts. Your brain quickly responds, "No, you don't. You failed yesterday. You always quit." But identity doesn't change because you deserve it. Identity changes because you declare it and enforce it. Raphael wrote the sentence on a piece of paper and placed it next to his bed. I wake up at 5 a.m. Not I will, not I'm trying, just a statement of who he was becoming. And then he did something even more powerful. He told other people, friends, co-workers, family. Whenever the topic of routines came up, Raphael said the same sentence, I wake up at 5 a.m. Public declarations create pressure because once your identity is spoken out loud, breaking it becomes painful. Not physically painful, socially painful. Your brain hates inconsistency between identity and behavior, and suddenly the habit had new weight. Now, when the alarm rang at 5 a.m., Raphael was not deciding whether to wake up. He was protecting something far more important, his identity. The internal conversation changed. Before, the voice said, maybe sleep a little longer. Now the voice said something different. If you stay in bed, you're lying. And that small shift changes everything. Because humans will tolerate discomfort much longer than they will tolerate identity collapse. This is why people keep promises to others more often than promises to themselves, because breaking a promise threatens identity. Raphael was no longer negotiating with a habit, he was defending a version of himself. But identity alone was not enough. There was still another hidden weakness in the system. Even people with strong identities fail habits when they face too many decisions. And waking up early contains one decision that destroys discipline more than any other. The question of when. What time exactly? 5 o'clock today, 5:30 tomorrow, maybe 6 o'clock after a late night. Every variation weakens the rule. And Raphael would soon discover that if the 5 a.m. habit was going to survive, the time itself had to become non-negotiable.
After Raphael changed his identity, something interesting happened. Waking up at 5 a.m. became easier, but it was still not stable. Some mornings worked perfectly. Others collapsed into the same old cycle: alarm, hesitation, negotiation. At first, this confused him. He had the identity now. He had the declaration. So why was the habit still fragile? The answer appeared in a concept most people never think about: decision fatigue. The human brain makes thousands of decisions every day. What to eat, what to wear, what to say, what to ignore. Every decision consumes a small amount of mental energy, and by the end of the day, that energy is almost gone. This is why people often make worse choices at night than they do in the morning. But there is a deeper layer to this problem. Some decisions are more dangerous than others. The most dangerous ones are recurring decisions that appear every single day. Because if a decision appears daily, the brain will eventually search for shortcuts. It will simplify. It will bend the rule. It will negotiate. And Raphael realized that his morning routine still contained a hidden decision: the decision of when to wake up. At first glance, this sounds ridiculous. 5 a.m. seems clear, but in reality, Raphael's brain was constantly adjusting the rule. If he slept late, maybe 5:30 today. If he felt tired, maybe 6 a.m. just this once. If the weather was cold, 5 more minutes. Every variation weakened the habit, because the moment the brain detects flexibility, it immediately tries to expand it. 5 minutes becomes 15. 15 becomes 30, and eventually the rule disappears completely. This is why many highly disciplined people treat time differently than everyone else. For them, certain hours are not preferences, they are non-negotiable anchors. You don't debate them, you obey them. Professional athletes train at fixed hours. Military units wake up at fixed hours. Monasteries ring bells at fixed hours. Not because they enjoy rigid schedules, but because removing the decision eliminates negotiation. Raphael decided to run a simple experiment. No flexibility, no adjustments, no exceptions.
The alarm would ring at exactly 5 a.m. every single day. Weekdays, weekends, travel days, rainy days, bad mood days. The rule was simple. The alarm rings, the body moves. Nothing else. No thinking, no debate, just movement. This may sound mechanical, but that was exactly the point. Discipline becomes stronger when behavior becomes automatic, and automation begins with consistency of time. After about 2 weeks, Raphael noticed something strange. The alarm started feeling different. Instead of a signal that required a decision, it became more like a reflex trigger. When the sound appeared, his body reacted before his mind had time to negotiate. He stood up, turned off the alarm, walked to the bathroom. Only after he was already awake did his brain begin forming thoughts, and by then, the hardest part was already over. This is how habits actually become powerful, not through motivation, but through predictability. When the brain knows exactly what happens at exactly the same time every day, it stops wasting energy questioning the behavior. The routine becomes a pattern. The pattern becomes automatic. But Raphael soon discovered another hidden weakness. Even if the time is fixed, people still sabotage their discipline through another variable. Not when the routine happens, but what the routine actually is. Too many options, too many methods, too many changes. And this is where most morning routines quietly collapse.
By the third week of waking up at 5 a.m., Raphael noticed something strange. The hardest part was no longer getting out of bed. That battle had mostly disappeared, but a new problem had quietly replaced it. Once he woke up, he didn't know what to do. Some mornings he tried meditation. Other mornings he tried journaling. Sometimes he exercised. Sometimes he watched productivity videos. Sometimes he just sat there scrolling through his phone, telling himself he was waking up slowly. The hour existed, but the structure did not. And slowly the discipline began to weaken again, because uncertainty creates friction. Every morning, Raphael had to ask himself the same question: what should I do now? That question seems harmless, but in the world of habits, it is extremely dangerous. Because every time you must decide what to do, you introduce another opportunity for negotiation. Maybe today you don't feel like exercising. Maybe meditation feels boring. Maybe reading feels too slow. So the brain starts searching for alternatives. And the moment alternatives appear, the routine becomes unstable. Raphael realized he had accidentally created a creative morning routine. But creativity is the enemy of automation. The brain cannot automate something that constantly changes. This is why elite performers often follow routines that look surprisingly simple, even repetitive, not because they lack imagination, but because repetition builds automatic behavior. Raphael returned to the idea of gyoji, practice without gaps, but he began to understand that the principle contained another hidden rule. The practice must also be predictable. If the behavior changes every day, the brain never fully learns it. So Raphael removed the final variable. No more experimenting, no more new systems, no more optimizing. Just one simple routine, every morning, exactly the same. The routine looked almost embarrassingly small. 20 push-ups, 10 minutes of meditation, 10 pages of reading. That was it. No complicated biohacking routine, no elaborate productivity ritual, just 3 actions. But the power was not in the actions themselves. The power was in the repetition. Every morning at 5 a.m., the same sequence happened. Wake up, push-ups, meditation, reading. The simplicity created something powerful, clarity. Now when Raphael woke up, there was nothing to decide. The next action was already known. His body began moving before his mind could question it. Push-ups, meditation, reading. Day after day, the pattern repeated, and something interesting began happening inside his brain. The basal ganglia, The part of the brain responsible for habits started recognizing the sequence. When behaviors repeat in identical patterns, the brain slowly transfers control away from conscious decision-making. Instead of actively choosing each action, the brain begins running the routine like a script. This is the moment habits become automatic. Not after a few days, not even after 2 weeks, but after enough repetition that the brain trusts the pattern. Studies suggest this process often takes around 66 days. 66 days of repeating the same actions in the same order at the same time. And once that threshold is crossed, something powerful happens. The routine stops feeling like effort. It becomes normal. But Raphael soon encountered another obstacle, because even strong habits can collapse when life interrupts them. Sickness, travel, unexpected stress. Most routines survive only when life is perfect, and life is rarely perfect, which is why the next principle may be the most important rule of all, a rule that prevents the entire system from collapsing the moment reality interferes. The rule of no gaps.
By the second month, Raphael's 5 a.m. routine had become surprisingly stable. The alarm rang, his body moved. Push-ups, meditation, reading. The sequence had started to feel almost automatic. For the first time, the habit didn't feel like a battle. It felt like a rhythm. And that was exactly when the real test arrived. One night, Raphael got sick. Nothing dramatic, just a fever, a sore throat, and the kind of fatigue that makes your entire body feel heavier than usual. At 5 a.m. the next morning, the alarm rang, and immediately the old voice returned. "You're sick. Your body needs rest. Skipping today makes sense." The argument sounded reasonable. In fact, it sounded responsible. And this is where most habits die. Not because people lack discipline, but because they believe discipline requires perfection. When the routine cannot be performed exactly as planned, they assume the correct choice is 0. But elite performers think differently. They prioritize continuity over intensity. The rule is simple. The routine must continue even if it becomes extremely small. So Raphael modified the rule. If he was healthy, he would perform the full routine. But if something went wrong, sickness, travel, exhaustion, the routine would shrink. Not disappear, shrink. On sick days, the routine became 5 push-ups, 2 minutes of meditation, 1 page of reading. That's it. A routine so small it almost felt ridiculous, but that was exactly the point. The purpose of the routine was not physical improvement on that day. The purpose was protecting the chain. Because the moment the chain breaks, the brain stops recognizing the habit as permanent. Raphael performed his miniature routine that morning. 5 push-ups, 2 minutes of quiet breathing, 1 page of a book. The entire routine took less than 5 minutes. Then he went back to bed. But something important had been preserved, the identity. He had not skipped the practice. He had maintained the rule. Over the following months, this principle saved the habit many times. Travel days, exhausting work days, cold winter mornings. Whenever the full routine felt impossible, the small version appeared, and every time the chain remained unbroken. This is why powerful habits often survive years while fragile ones disappear quickly. The strong ones are designed to survive bad days, because bad days are not rare events, they are inevitable. But even with identity, fixed time, fixed method, and no gaps, there was still one final weakness left in the system. Because life doesn't only create inconvenience, sometimes it creates chaos. Oversleeping, late flights, unexpected emergencies, moments when the brain is tired, stressed, and incapable of making good decisions. And if the response to those moments is not prepared in advance, the habit will eventually collapse. Which is why the final principle exists, a rule that eliminates decision-making before the problem even happens, the rule of pre-solutions.
By now, Raphael's system looked strong. He had an identity. I wake up at 5 a.m.
He had a fixed time. The alarm rang every day at exactly 5. He had a fixed method: push-ups, meditation, reading. He had the rule of no gaps. Even bad days still contained a smaller version of the routine. For a while, everything worked perfectly. And then one morning, something unexpected happened. Raphael woke up at 6:47 a.m. The alarm never rang. His phone had died during the night. For a moment, he lay there staring at the ceiling, and the familiar voice appeared again. "Well, the system is broken today. You already failed. Just start again tomorrow." This is another moment where most habits quietly collapse, because when something goes wrong, the brain immediately asks a dangerous question: what should I do now? And if the answer is not already decided, the brain will choose the easiest option, which is usually nothing. Raphael almost fell into that trap, but during his research on discipline systems used by monks and elite performers, he had discovered another principle, a principle called pre-commitment. The idea is simple. Instead of deciding what to do during a crisis, you decide before the crisis ever happens, because the brain that designs systems is very different from the brain that wakes up tired, stressed, or confused. The planning brain is calm. The stressed brain seeks comfort. So disciplined people create rules that look like this: if X happens, I do Y. Not maybe, not depending on mood, a fixed response. Raphael wrote several of these rules into his routine. If I oversleep, I do the short routine immediately. If I wake up after 6 a.m., I still complete the habit before anything else. If I travel, the routine shrinks to the 5-minute version. If I feel exhausted, I perform the smallest version, but I do not skip. If the alarm fails, the routine happens the moment I wake up. These rules may seem small, but they remove something incredibly dangerous from the system: decision-making under stress. Because when you are tired, late, or overwhelmed, your brain becomes extremely good at inventing excuses. But when the rule already exists, there is no discussion. The brain simply follows the instruction. Raphael got out of bed that morning at 6:47, not because he felt motivated, but because the rule already existed. If oversleep, short routine. 5 push-ups, 2 minutes of meditation, 1 page of reading. 3 minutes later, the system was intact again. No guilt, no restarting tomorrow, no collapse. The habit survived. Over time, Raphael realized something important. The strongest routines are not the ones designed for perfect mornings. They are designed for messy mornings. Because life will always introduce chaos. Flights get delayed, phones die, people get sick, schedules collapse. If a habit can survive only when life is predictable, it is not actually a strong habit. It is a fragile one. But when the response to chaos is already built into the system, discipline becomes incredibly hard to break. Months passed, and then something subtle began to change. Raphael stopped thinking about the 5 a.m. rule at all. The alarm rang, his body moved, the routine happened. It no longer felt like discipline, it felt normal. And something even stranger began happening. Other people started noticing. Friends began asking questions. Coworkers started making comments. Some of them even said something unexpected. "You're kind of scary." Not because Raphael had become aggressive, but because his behavior had become predictable, unshakable. And when people encounter someone who cannot be easily shaken by comfort, excuses, or chaos, they sense a kind of discipline that feels almost intimidating. This is the moment when the habit stops being a routine and becomes a transformation. Around the 4th month, Raphael stopped tracking his habit. Not because he gave up, but because he no longer needed to. In the beginning, every morning had felt like a small battle. Alarm rings, mind argues, discipline responds. It required effort, attention, focus. But something subtle had changed. The routine had crossed a threshold. Now, when the alarm rang at 5 a.m., Raphael did not think about waking up. He simply stood up. No internal debate, no motivational speech, no mental preparation, just movement. Push-ups, meditation, reading. The sequence unfolded the same way it had unfolded dozens of times before. The brain had learned the pattern. And when the brain trusts a pattern, it stops questioning it. This is the quiet moment where discipline transforms into identity. You are no longer someone forcing yourself to do something difficult. You are simply someone who does that thing. And the difference between those two states is enormous. Because forcing yourself requires constant energy, but identity runs on autopilot. Raphael began noticing the effects outside the morning routine. His work became calmer, his focus improved, he procrastinated less. Not because he suddenly discovered secret productivity techniques, but because the first decision of the day was already won. Every morning began with a signal to his brain: I do what I say I will do. That signal carries power. When the brain sees consistent evidence of discipline, it slowly adjusts its expectations. Hard things stop feeling unusual, they start feeling normal. But the most interesting change happened in the way other people reacted to him. At first, it was small comments. You wake up at 5 a.m. every day? That sounds impossible. Even weekends? Then the comments became more curious. How do you actually do that? Don't you ever feel like skipping? Raphael always gave the same simple answer. I wake up at 5 a.m. Not I try, not I'm working on it, just a statement. And something about that certainty made people uncomfortable, because most people live inside negotiation. They negotiate with the gym, they negotiate with their diet, they negotiate with their alarms. So when they encounter someone who simply does not negotiate, it feels unusual, almost intimidating. One coworker laughed one afternoon and said something that stuck with Raphael. You're kind of scary, you know that? Raphael asked why. The coworker shrugged. You just do things every day, no excuses. It wasn't meant as an insult, it was an observation. Consistency creates a kind of psychological gravity. When people know your behavior is predictable, they start trusting it, they expect it, and eventually they stop questioning it entirely. This is why monks appear calm, why elite athletes appear focused, why disciplined individuals sometimes seem distant from chaos. Their behavior is no longer controlled by mood, it is controlled by identity. And identity is far more stable than motivation. Raphael never became a different person overnight. There was no dramatic transformation, just one rule: 5 a.m. every day. Push-ups, meditation, reading. Month after month, the rule quietly shaped his identity, until one day the truth became obvious. He was no longer someone building a habit. He had become the kind of person who cannot easily break one. And that is the real purpose of the 5 a.m. rule. Not waking up early, but building a person who is difficult to stop. Which leads to one final question. If a single rule can transform identity like this, what rule will you declare for yourself?
At the beginning of this story, waking up at 5 a.m. looked like a productivity trick, a strategy, another morning routine promising more focus, more discipline, more success. But by now, you can probably see that the real power of the 5 a.m. rule has very little to do with the hour itself. 5 a.m. is simply a container for something much deeper: identity. Because the moment a rule becomes non-negotiable, it stops being a habit. It becomes a line you refuse to cross. Most people approach discipline the same way they approach motivation. They wait until they feel ready. They wait for the perfect Monday, the perfect month, the perfect moment to start again. But disciplined people operate differently. They don't wait for perfect conditions. They create rules that remove the need for conditions entirely. No negotiation, no emotional debate, just a system. That is the real meaning behind everything you've just seen. Identity. Fixed time, fixed method. No gaps. Pre-solutions for when life becomes chaotic. Repeat long enough, and the habit stops feeling like discipline. It becomes who you are. So here is the challenge. If you are serious about changing your mornings, write your declaration below. Not a wish, not a goal, a rule. Something simple and clear. Maybe it's I wake up at 5 a.m. Maybe it's another discipline you want to build. But whatever it is,
Write it like an identity. Because the moment you declare it publicly, the transformation has already begun. And if you want more ideas on building this kind of discipline, subscribe to the channel, because the next video will explore another system used by monks and elite performers to build a level of consistency most people believe is impossible. Until then, set the alarm, 5 a.m. And tomorrow morning, when the negotiation begins, remember one thing. You're not someone who is trying. You're someone who wakes up at 5 a.m.